Well, hey there, it's Catherine from CatherinePooler.com. I'm glad you're here. We're going to use some Sursee subscription products that are shipping out in February to our subscribers. And if you are a subscriber already and you love the element of surprise, you may want to wait to watch this video. And whether you're a subscriber or not, I hope you will gain inspiration and maybe learn something new in this video. So these are the cards we're going to create, and we're going to create them with these fun images. So for you Sursee subscribers that love the element of surprise with this monthly subscription, I'm not going to show you the products in their entirety, but I will show you bits and pieces. So we have these floral stems, line art. They're fairly simple images, so they're pretty easy to color in. You guys know me, I'm not a humongous colorist, but I do like to dabble a bit. And so we have the stems, and then we have that gorgeous swag. And then we have this cute little vase, and then the little card that you tuck in the bouquet when you send a bouquet to a friend. Isn't that adorable? And then we have another set with these gorgeous flourishes and roses. You can stamp them in black and white and color in that rose. You can also just stamp them in color and use them as accents on your cards. So we'll be using all of these stamped images on our cards. Here they are all die cut. In the lower left-hand corner, you're going to see a little peek of some gorgeous die-cut roses that are included in the deluxe Sursee subscription for February. We won't be using them in this video, but you will see them in the future. This month is a huge winner. I am totally head over heels for this collection, so I know you guys are going to love it too. So I stamped a bunch and die cut them all at once, so then I have a stash all ready to go. And I did this on watercolor paper because I'm going to be coloring them in. I'm using my blender pen. This is basically a clear marker and it's wet. So when you add water to paper, if you use regular paper, it's going to pill up if you go over it too many times. But with watercolor paper, you can add quite a bit of water to it and you're going to be fine. So for this flower, I'm just laying down a light color of Coral Cabana over the entire flower. And you see I'm just dipping my blender pen straight onto the top of the ink pad. You can do it that way, or you can take the lid, and a lot of times I'll have ink on the lid, or you can take an ink refill and squeeze a little bit into the lid. You can take your ink pad and squish it down onto an acrylic block or a piece of acetate or something like that and make a little color palette for yourself. So you can see I just went into different little areas and just darkened up the flower just to give it some dimension. And then for the leaves, I'm doing Garden Party first, and I'm using one of my CP mini ink pads. And then I could keep going into Garden Party and making it darker that way. But I decided I wanted it even darker, and so I just grabbed a darker shade of green. So I used Grass Skirt here. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this daffodil, and I'm going to use two different colors. So shading is achieved either like with the Coral Cabana flower, where I'm just adding layers of color and darkening it that way, or you can use two different shades or even three different shades. So I'm laying down a base of Tiara first, and then I'm going to add in some Tiki Torch. So Tiki Torch is this gorgeous, bright, almost fluorescent orange yellow color, and it's going to give some really great shading here really easily. So I did have quite a bit of Tiki Torch in the lid there, but I wanted more concentrated color. That's why I grabbed the ink refill and squeezed some more into the ink pad lid. So you can get many shades of one color just by using a little bit of that color, using a little more, or using that ink refill and getting really heavy concentration. So I'm just going to go back and forth, adding in that base of Tiara, and then toward the center of the flower and where the petals meet the center, I'm darkening it in there, and that gives great shading. And then I'm just going to scribble the blender pen off on scratch paper until the tip runs clear, and then I'm ready to go into my next color. So a little bit of Grass Skirt here on the stem, and I'm all done with this gorgeous daffodil. Next up, I'm just going to color some foliage. So I'm using the Garden Party and Grass Skirt First, I'm just laying down that lighter color, and then I'm going to grab the grass skirt, which is several shades darker than Garden Party, and add my shading in there. So I'm starting at the bottom of each leaf and just kind of feathering and flicking that blender pen up toward the top. And as my pen gets flicked, like the heaviest concentration of color is going to be at the base of that leaf, and then it's going to get lighter as I go up each time I flick it. So this is a great little method for adding shading to stamped images. You can go back and forth as many times as you want. You can even get a darker concentration of color if you get the grass skirt ink refill and put it in the lid just like I did with that Tiki torch. So it's up to you how dark you want to go and how long you want to spend coloring. So I love cutting out a whole bunch at once, and then, it's a great little stress reliever just to have a bunch to color in, maybe while you're watching a little bit of TV or hanging out talking to friends. Sometimes I even work on little projects like this while watching video tutorials or listening to podcasts. So it's just a really great pastime. And then when you have a little stash of colored images, then you have them on hand to adorn technique pieces and different cards that you may be working on. So I colored that little spray with the little buds or little berries on the end with pixie dust, and then I'm going to color in this vase. So I'm using It's a Boy ink. For the top part of the vase above the chevron stripe, I'm using that flicking method again, and then I'm just going to go in with a light color wash over the whole thing and then darken around the edges. I'm going to make the chevron stripe a little bit darker for added detail. And then one more image I'm going to color in is that little note card to tuck into the bouquet. I think this is so adorable and a really unique touch. So for that little metal piece that would tuck into the bouquet, I'm just doing that in blackjack. And then I'm going to color the envelope with a very light wash of It's a Boy. And when I first touched my blender pen to the ink pad, it was a little bit darker than I wanted. So then I just kind of dabbed it off on scratch paper to get it lighter. And then I could come in from the sides and shade toward the middle. And as my brush strokes went toward the middle, my blender pen got lighter. So then it gave me some really great shading. And then Rockin red for that cute little heart. And I'm all set with all of my pieces to create this card. So it took me a little bit of playing with placement of my flowers in the vase to figure out exactly how I wanted them to go. So when you are creating with your Club Sursee products, don't be afraid to copy my layout exactly or one of our brand ambassadors, or tweak our designs and come up with a new way to place these in the vase. No way is wrong, whatever is eye-pleasing to you and whatever you like. So I did the rose and the daffodil and this sprig of greenery, and the daffodil and rose were adhered straight onto the card base, and then the greenery I tucked in with some dimensional foam tape, and then also the vase is dimensional foam tape. So I'm still not quite sure how all of my placement is going to go, so I'm still kind of playing with it and trimming off that stem for the greenery and figuring out where my little envelope is going to tuck in. So I did adhere down that daffodil, so I just kind of peeled it up a little bit with my scissors. It wasn't quite dry yet, luckily, because I wasn't ready for it to be, so maybe I should have played a little bit more before I glued, but no harm. Everything was fine. It didn't stick too much and tear my paper, so I was very happy about that. So then I wanted to add the sprig, but then it kind of, oh, actually that looks really cute. I probably should have left it there. But anyway, maybe you like where the sprig was and you'll leave it in your bouquet. And I'm going to do my sentiment on here, and I'm going to use my Misty stamping tool because I want to be sure that I stamp it nice and solid and gorgeous, because I don't want to have to mess this up and then do it again. So this is this is the finished card. It's just a simple white on white with this gorgeous bouquet. And then I'm going to move on to this swag of roses. I love this image. I used it recently in, I think, Yes, it was a YouTube live. So in the description below on YouTube, I will link to that video because I used it on a card with cover plate. So I did a white on white cover plate background, and then I did a swag with a word die and a little secondary sentiment white embossed on black, and it came out absolutely gorgeous. Love this swag of roses. So here I'm going to use it in a really fun way. This is one of those cards that when I was done, I ran around the office showing everyone because I was really happy with how it came out. So I'm using Be Mine ink, and I just did that light layer of color all over the roses and then going back in with a darker concentration to give some depth to the roses. And then I'm doing the same thing with all of the greenery. And then I added in a smidge of It's a Boy for some added color on the little berries or buds or the little sprays there. And then I want to add some glitter. So I'm using my two-way glue and I'm just dabbing it onto the little buds. And then I'm going to take my glass slipper glitter and sprinkle it over the top. Give it a little flick on the back to get rid of any of the excess glitter, and you have some gorgeous glitz and glam on that flower swag. I'm going to use the flower swag to make a wreath, and I thought it would be really gorgeous to do this Flourish stamp in the background. So I knew I wanted to do a really light, subtle color on the background, but I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to turn out. So I thought the best idea would be to use my Misty stamping tool, which ended up being a really great idea. So I used my Twilight ink, and then I stamped it off on scratch paper first so that I have a lighter shade of Twilight, and then I stamped it right onto that background. And I thought that gave a really gorgeous, subtle Flourish element there. But I wanted it to be even more. So I grabbed my Wow embossing pad and I stamped it a couple times to make sure that it was really heavily coated and super tacky. And before I took my layer out of the Misty stamping tool, I decided to stamp my sentiment. So I did it in Blackjack because I wanted it to be not quite as stark as Midnight. Blackjack is a super dark gray, and it's fantastic for sentiments. So for this Flourish, I'm going to use Wanderlust embossing glitter. This is a clear glitter, and it's just going to give a really subtle sparkle and shine there to that Flourish. So it's going to be a really super light gray with gorgeous glitter and sparkle, and I think it's going to be stunning. So I poured on that embossing glitter, tapped it off, gave a little flick off the back to remove any excess glitter that might be hanging around. Although if there was excess glitter that got embossed onto there, I don't think that would be a bad thing. But then I'm just going to heat it with my Wow embossing heat tool and watch that powder turn shiny, and then I know it's all done, and you can see that glitz and glam there in the light, and it looks awesome. So once I had the wreath on the front of the card, I could not help myself, you guys. I just had to make this into a shaker card. So I decided to cut out a frame. So I grabbed my circle dies and grabbed two circle dies that were next to each other in size that would fit the wreath, and I cut the frame. And then the larger circle, I cut the piece of acetate, and then I'm going to glue the acetate to the circle frame. And then I'm going to take my Doris foam strips. They are super skinny strips of foam tape, and they are perfect for shaker cards. They have a really nice height to them. When I use the 3M mounting tape, a lot of times I will double it up so that the height is higher. So that I get more height on it, and then my sequins have a lot of room to move around inside the shaker piece. But with the Doris foam strips, the height feels a little bit higher to me. It's making me laugh. Higher height, whatever, you guys get me. So I like the height of these foam strips. They feel nice. So I'm just putting them all around this circle like a fence around the yard so the dogs don't get out. So your sequins will be trapped inside and they won't fall out. And then I'm going to take this shaker piece and I'm going to lay it right on top of the card front so I won't have a backing. So basically I'm making a free-flowing shaker element here. So I'm taking the smaller of the two circle dies that I used to make that frame and I'm laying it on top of my card front, and this is going to be the parameters for where my sequins are going to go. So I need to make sure that they stay well within this circle so that I know when I add the shaker bit right on top of my pile of sequins that it's going to contain all of them, because you want to make sure they're inside. You don't want to get any of them onto the foam sticky stuff or anything like that. So this is the method. And then sequins, I wasn't sure which ones I wanted to use. So I got the Charleston Sequin mix, the Crater Lake, and then I got the Springfield mix. And this is one of those times where I was wishing that I was live with you guys so you can help me decide. When we have live streams on Facebook and YouTube, that's one of the things that I absolutely love, is interacting with you guys so you can tell me what to do. So I didn't have you this time, so I had to decide on my own. And I decided to mix all three of them together. And then it was funny because I went and showed this to Erica after the fact, and she guessed all. I didn't tell her how many sequin mixes were in there, and she looked at the shaker card and she called out all three sequin mixes that I used. Impressive, right? That should be like a trivia quiz question. Name the sequin mixes. So I'm just picking out different little pieces. I wanted to make sure I got some of those purple flowers from the Springfield mix and some of the blue beads from the Charleston mix, and I ended up being really super happy with the mix that I ended up with. I thought it looked gorgeous with the swag or wreath of roses. So now it's time to add that shaker frame right on top, and I am loving this. Super happy with how this turned out. And then I can take the wreath swag and just add some Nouveau glue and just add it right around that circle frame. So you can see that one I had stamped on the back as well, and I thought I'd let you in on why. This was created with watercolor cardstock, and it's the Ken Oliver cardstock. You can get that in our shop. And one side is smooth and one side is rough. And I love the rough side for certain things. Like, it looks really rich and expensive to me. And I tried stamping on that side, and because of the fine detail of these stamps, I had trouble getting a solid stamped image with these swags. So I turned it over and re-stamped it on the smooth side, and I decided I didn't want to waste any cardstock, so I used the other side, and that's that. And then I wanted to add some sequins around the wreath, and I just sprinkled them in here and there. And I am so excited about this card. I'm going to put it on my desk and look at it because I love shaker cards, and I love this rose wreath, and I love the Flourish stamped in glitter. So for the next card, we're going to do some more simple coloring. So we're going to stamp this Flourish and Rose in Midnight. Our Midnight ink is our black ink. It is very dark black, and it is an archival ink, which means it's permanent. So it is waterproof. It is safe for Copic markers. If you use this Midnight ink with our Catherine Pooler cardstock in Copic markers, you're going to get a really great blend. If you use a different kind of cardstock, you might want to hit it with your heat tool real quick just to make sure that it dries and it doesn't smear at all. But you might want to experiment and practice and see what kind of results you get just to make sure you get the best results. But anyway, this Midnight ink is archival. It will stain your stamp, so just a really light touch so that you don't squish down and get ink all over the back of that stamp. And since it does stain your stamps, you just want to be careful so that you don't end up with black all over that stamp. The actual image part, that doesn't bother me if that's black. It actually, I kind of like that because it helps it stand out and you can see what the image is. And the best way to clean Midnight off of your stamp is with Ultra Clean. I've shown that in several videos, so you may have seen me do it before, but as soon as you finish stamping, you're going to want to spray your stamp down with Ultra Clean, and that is the best way to get off the black ink. It won't get it off 100%, but it does a pretty good job. So for coloring in this This image, we're going to use Coral Cabana, and I wanted it to be a little more vibrant and dark, so I grabbed the ink refill bottle and just squeezed some ink into the lid. I'm going to lay down a light wash of color here, and then I'm just going to go back in just like I did in the flowers at the beginning of the video, and I'm just going to add some darker shading in various spots on this stamp. So this rose is a little larger than the rose that I was coloring in at the very beginning of the video, the one on the stem. So I think that's when it's more beneficial to bring in another ink color. So I'm grabbing Rockin Red, and then I'm going to be able to kind of just dab in a little bit of extra darker color in some spots on the rose. This will give nice depth and shading into some of those little nooks and crannies where the rose petals would kind of be coming into the center. So when choosing colors to use together in situations like this, just go for colors that are next to each other on the rainbow. So for Coral Cabana, I could have gone with a dark pink. The red is going to work really well, or I could have gone toward the orange side and used Orange Twist or Tutti Frutti. Any of those colors would have given nice shading. So you might want to practice and look at the inks that you have, put them in rainbow order, light to dark, and just kind of play with different color combinations. So here I'm using Grass Skirt for the green, and these are really small images, so it's easier to get that nice shading going on in a small area like this. If I had a bigger leaf, I may have started with Lime Rickey or even lighter and gone to Garden Party and then come in with my Grass Skirt to make it darker. Now this next part of the card may be my very favorite part of this card, the sequins. I'm really excited about the sequin mix that I chose to go with this card because this was one of our Christmas mixes. It's called Christmas Cove, and it's got gorgeous red and green sequins along with some green sequins that have like a copper shimmer to them and some brown sequins. So I thought that would go really fantastic with this card. So I'm mostly picking out the brown and the green with a copper shimmer to them. And then this card is all finished except for the sentiment. So using the Misty stamping tool to make sure that it's straight and it's also nice and black and stamped solidly. And then I'm just going to layer this onto a card front. Some simple stamping, some coloring simple images, a couple gorgeous sequins, and you're all set. I hope you enjoyed this video with all the tips for simple coloring, from blender pens to ink refills to using different colors. And here is a look at the 3 cards we made. There will be more information on my blog post. It will be linked below. And if you have not subscribed to our Club Sursee program yet, you're going to want to run over there and subscribe now so you get a little special something in your mailbox every single month and get a great discount to boot. There's no minimum commitment for subscribing. You can cancel at any time, but we think you're going to love the program and stick around for a while. Thanks for being here. Hope you subscribe to my channel, and I will see you again very soon.